We are going to begin with a short meditation to help us all become present. So I invite you to relax in your seat, to close your eyes, and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema, and on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we're listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, today, our initial question, I'm going to begin sharing my slides. Can you see these okay? Yes, okay, great. So today I wanted to start us with a quote from Rabbi Zelig Pliskin. He said, when we are impatient because we want to be in the future faster than reality will take us there. And I read that this week as the pandemic drags on, as I've been dealing with, as many people in this area have been dealing with the smoke from the fires, or the evacuations from the fires, and from all of the political uncertainty, the climate crisis, the racial reckoning that we're going through. I really do want to be in the future much faster than reality is going to bring us here. So I wanted to, now that I've given you my punchline, I'd like to know what this brings up for you, and how, I suspect I'm not the only one who relates to these feelings, and I'd love to hear some other perspectives. Did I just give the whole punchline and say everything interesting to be said on this topic?
Greg, I want to say I was having an experience today of kind of exactly the opposite of that, and radically different than I've had in the last 6 months. And I will just say that 6 months ago on March 14th, my second graders' school basically said, "Bye guys, we'll see you in a month." And I walked off the campus thinking, it's not going to be a month. We're not going to see you for a long time. But I really did just think it would be the end of the school year and we'd be back by now, which we're not. And as the summer dragged on and as the virus was growing and there isn't any way safe for my kid, of started thinking, I think even if they open the school, I'm not going to be comfortable sending him. And the insight today, so now I've been homeschooling, we're in week 4 now, and I won't say homeschooling because I have my kid who is in school at home and goes online with his teacher for somewhere between half an hour and an hour, and then has a whole slew of things. He's 8.
Mm,
He's in 3rd grade. There's a lot of parent support and monitoring and helping.
mhm,
But I had this moment today where he was doing his classwork, I was doing my classwork, and, starting to prepare lunch. And I felt so grateful and so happy and so like, wow, my kid gets to be in 3rd grade at home and I get to know what's going on there and we get to bond and have lunch together and spend all this time. And like it was, I don't know, I think the first time that I felt just actually really in awe and grateful and thought, this is it. We're going to be here for months and months and maybe a year, and I am just going to embrace it. So
mm.
I didn't feel at all impatient. I just felt like, oh, this is it. I'm in my little Noah's Ark, and we have internet.
Thank you, Elisheva. That's a great sort of contrast. And so I sort of painted the picture kind of where I was feeling this week, and Elisheva painted a picture where she was feeling. And how do those two pictures relate to impatience? Is this a good definition of what it is to be patient, or is it just, is it unrelated to the concept of patience?
Well, I think it's related, this Joanne, because like she was saying, she's very happy the way things are right now. So, and she wouldn't feel comfortable sending her kid back to a building, a school building. But so she doesn't really want the future to come faster than she's ready for.
Mm,
And she's getting a lot of benefit. And I think patience does have to do with like getting benefit or enjoying things about where you are right now and what's going on right now. And I mean, to me, the future that I would look forward to would be like being able to get on an airplane and go to Israel again,
mm,
or even feel comfortable on an Amtrak train down to Florida or something.
mm,
But right now, I don't feel comfortable. So, and I'm working for the Census Bureau for the month of September, which is interesting. So I mean, sometimes it's very frustrating, but sometimes it's rewarding. And I'm glad I'm working and making some money. So all those things make me not impatient for the future. And in the future, I'm only going to be older than I am right now. So I might as well, like I say, enjoy yourself. It's later than you think. Enjoy the moment. That's my
thank
take.
you. Thank you, Joanne. And I heard sort of a couple of phrases that you used multiple times was right now and in the future. There's where you are right now and there's where you'll be in the future. And what I've heard from you and from Elisheva is really being at peace with right now. Not necessarily what we'd choose at all, but from the two of you, it sounded like I was hearing acceptance and being in peace with it. And by the way, I'm also working for the Census Bureau, although I haven't gotten any hours the last couple of weeks, and I couldn't go out because of the smoke. But yeah, it's a nice gig. I enjoy it. Other thoughts?
I think that impatience for me, it arises when, well, very much like the quote says, we want to be past where we are now. And so not having control over that speed at which I'm going through life, it forces me to be in the present. And if I can either resist that or I can accept it. And I find that I'm happier when I accept it, although it's a little process to get there. It's not like an instantaneous thing. I have to be mindful. So for me, patience is something that gets tested. It's not patience unless you have to exercise it or not exercise it. But usually when we talk about patience, at least in my life, because my nickname is this freight train. Like when I get an idea, I'm like, that's what my husband calls me, up the freight train. My son calls me the same if I get, inspired. So I have to, for me, it's more a thing of acceptance. And once I get there, then I realize, oh, wow, a lot of things have opened up for me just by accepting what is and looking at, well, what are the possibilities for right now? What's happening right now? And it's been amazing. This pandemic has really opened up opportunities like crazy. I don't want to go into them all, but I mean, it's been great. So there is a silver lining with acceptance.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey. Was there someone else who was going to share, or should we?
I will.
Okay. Yeah.
One thing I do once a week or so is I hang the sheets on the line after washing them. Nature doesn't work quickly. I don't work quickly when I hang sheets. It forces me to be in the moment. It's a slow thing. It's a little like making bread, which I just did today. You can't do it fast. And it also, in a way, connects me with my ancestors because they did things the slow way also. I know that, people don't understand why I have a clothesline. What is that? But it's my therapy. It's therapy.
Thank you, Janet. Wendy. Wendy and Wendy.
So good, Janet. It's so good. This Wendy or the other Wendy?
You.
Okay. Well, Janet, that just leads into, I think of the person on this earth and the people on this earth who have to deal with other people's limitations the most. It's probably the OB doctor, obstetrician. I'm thinking patients.
Having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh, to me, the obstetrician has to deal with patients a lot. It's the women who are pregnant, they're patient, they want to have the baby, but when they take a deep breath and they realize what's going on and the growth that's happening, it's like patient leads to awe. It's like another bit about awe. How much growth is going on at this time? So if I become impatient, there's something growing, and I was very impatient to get to these Mussar meetings, which may be my last one. Who knows? I keep getting to come to them, which has been great. But impatience, been able to go to Greg, he was able to give me the idea of having a study partner, which that was a growth to me, and I was in awe of that. So I think impatience can lead to patience, and impatience can lead to awe. So it's definitely a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. And a couple of things. I absolutely love that sort of comparison to pregnancy and realizing that there's growth that's going on during that period of waiting. And I am told, you cannot speed things up. Things take a very set amount of time. But also, it's okay. There are going to be times when we are impatient, when we are frustrated, and that's okay too. There are going to be times where we're not in such great shape, and that's part of the picture.
True. Very true.
Wendy, did you have your hand up earlier?
I just haven't taken it down.
Okay. Okay, so Sarah, I saw you. You can unmute yourself, or perhaps I can do that on my end. Huh, it is not letting me unmute you, Sarah. So we will come back to that. Any other comments before we move on? Oh, Linda, yes.
I don't know if other people are having this experience, but with all this time at home, my mind goes more to the past than the present or future. And I think about the times that I have been impatient, regretfully, and I'm trying to make this connection between when one is impatient, maybe there's some anxiety. Anxiety to me means running, like running away from something. And like it's not packaged well, but these are the thoughts that I'm having these days.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I was feeling the same way about that statement. That sometimes for me too, I get caught up in wishful thinking, whether it's from my past or into my future, and it creates anxiety for me too, which then turns into impatience and frustration. Yes. Yeah.
So it's Sarah. I was able to unmute. I'm going to say that the last 2.5 weeks has been the most impatient times for me with this whole COVID thing because of not being able to go outside, air quality. So that's been really hard, and I find I'm cranky. I'm very, very tired. I'm trying to sleep more, and if I could be a bear, I would go hibernate until this is over, but I can't. So. But yeah, patience has always been kind of tough for me, but this is really testing it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sarah and Wendy and Linda. And, I'm hearing a couple of things. One is a big test now. And also, there are other ways for being out of the present besides thinking about the future. Sometimes maybe it means the past. And sometimes, if we become out of the present, what I was hearing and, when I was listening was that, that leads to an anxiety and anxiety sort of spiral, then that, can lead to, a lot of impatience and frustration. And, that's, I'm sure that we have all been there. I know I've been there. I know I've been there this week. And that's part of the picture. And I think trying to be, for me, remembering to be patient with myself and self-compassion. And, that's kind of what we want to talk about today is, when we're kind of in that space where, what are some of the tools that we can bring to bear. Whoops, I started the slide without sharing the slide again. Let's look at the full quote from Rabbi Pliskin because it's interesting. Could someone have a volunteer to unmute and read the full quote, please?
The essence of patience is to live in the present. We are impatient because we want to be in the future faster than reality will take us there. Since we will generally be in the exact same place whether we experience patience or impatience, it makes sense to choose to be patient. Rabbi Zelig Pliskin.
Okay, so there you go. It's just that simple, right? All we have to do is just choose to be patient. Oh, that's what I've been doing wrong. I've been choosing to be impatient. So, yeah, it's the same. So is that just overly simplistic, or is there something to this? What do we think?
So I think it's as simple as that, though. I think once you become impatient, I think you're also letting fear into yourself because you're predicting something in the future and you're fearing what's going to be happening in the future, or you're wanting what's going to be happening in the future. So that saying is, I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. It's like, yeah, that's what you got to do, but you got to remind yourself to do that. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's simple, but simple isn't necessarily easy. Some of the simplest changes that we have to make are incredibly difficult. Maybe not this one. That one might not be incredibly difficult for some people, and maybe incredibly different for others. But even the simplest things are difficult.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, that reminds me a little bit about this bottom quote here. One who is slow to anger is better than the mighty one, and one who rules over the spirit is better than one who conquers a city. And so we're not talking, you know, being slow to anger is also difficult. And, you know, I think it speaks to like a real, you know, like sometimes, like I think Elisheva, she told me she'd only be here for a couple minutes and she needed to go. But what I heard from her story earlier was it just kind of sort of struck her. It's like, you know, this isn't all bad. And wow, how cool is that to like be spending all the time with my kid, you know, when they're in school, you know, and that's a life experience that maybe these aren't her words, but this is what I took from it. It's like, wow, this is a life experience that we may all look back on and be like, wow, that was incredible. That was amazing. And so many kids have like really missed having attention from their parents. And all of a sudden they're getting more attention than they possibly want. So that's not such a bad thing for young kids. But these are, you know, so sometimes we just sort of have that, oh, wow. But other times, you know, the way I interpret this is sometimes we got to work for it. You know, when we're not there, we can, again, wait for well, eventually, you know, things will click in and I'll start feeling the awe. But maybe we have to work for it. And maybe there's something we can train ourselves to do. And what do people think? Has anyone ever had any success sort of training yourself to maybe change the outlook on where they are?
Yeah, a little bit. I think so. I think it's a matter of intentionality and mindfulness, that the more of that I exercise, and which is where Mussar comes in, because basically that's what this is all about for each of these traits. And so the more that I practice the reading, the rephrasing, like for me, patience, I rephrase that as easy does it. Because for me, I want to do everything now. And, you know, I want to get everything done now. I have all these goals and they take too long. And that's been the story of my life. So I intentionally have to say, well, no, one step today, a little step here, a little step there, and pat yourself on the back because you just took a step toward that goal. And that's a mindful decision to change my perspective on my expectations, change those things. And that's where that work comes in. It's an exercise.
I would like to share here. I was lucky in some ways when I was in college, what, 40, 50 years ago. I had an epiphany. I would be behind some older ladies shopping, and I would be irritated. And at some point, I don't know how many times I was irritated, I said, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to push them out of my way. No way. And so I learned some patience then. And I think that has served me well when I become aware of it. And because the idea is that, like it says, you are where you're supposed to be. And I think that's the way and matter of fact, I kind of use that lesson when I have to wait. And rather than being annoyed, I'm saying, oh, this is a gift of time. On I want to mention two other areas, though. I've been part of the social justice movement here in Kentucky, and I would say that I would have less patience in that.
Mhm.
But again, I've learned that we move on our own pace, and a community moves on its own pace. All I can be is a voice. And sometimes I've been called the conscience of certain groups. So again, it's not what happens, it's how we present ourselves, I think. So those are two things that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Frank. And yes, last week, and I know you and Linda were unable to be here last week, but that was where we were sort of talking about you can't have too much patience in a social justice context. Sometimes you need to push the envelope. But yeah, that is absolutely a very important part of the picture. And one of the things that I do sometimes when I'm practicing patience is I will seek out a longer line in the grocery store just to practice that feeling of, because literally, we do a practice and it's like, okay, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say my little patience mantra and I'm going to practice the waiting, because when we do that and what you experience is you make a change in your soul. And then when you make that change in your soul, it serves you well when you're tested in another situation. And that's, I think, a wonderful example of how we can sort of work for it. And when you're right, like, when you're in the pandemic and, the fires and the unemployment and everything else, that's a hard time to start. But if that's where we are, it's also okay to start there. But the more that we can build up those patience muscles, or any of these Mussar muscles in other situations, we can be well served. Okay, Janos.
A couple of things to add to all very good points, that often we live as if we can go somewhere. Actually, when you realize, imagine you're watching the Earth from a moon, sitting there on a chair, is nowhere to go, really. But we feel that we can go somewhere. Second one, when we are impatient, we really are more focused on a destination than on a process. You plant a seed, you have to wait until it grows. And then I remember from last time when we did the patient that we learned that actually when you are patient, it doesn't mean you have to be calm.
Right. That is a good transition to, let's see, there was one slide. There it is. Savlanut, it is, the Hebrew word is tolerance, but it's also, the root is related to carrying a burden. And so, if we're, as you point out, Janos, when we're calm, it's not a time when we need patience. Patience is about enduring like a challenging situation when there's no other option that's available. It's actually Alan Moranis, called it like the last gift from the divine. Like when there's no other options, when we can't take any other action, we can be patient. And I actually created, where is it? You may remember from the book, like a little decision tree. Like if you're in a difficult situation, is the situation stressful? No. Okay, you don't need patience. You can enjoy it. But if it is stressful, can you control it? Well, that's sort of where I feel like where many of us are right now. No, we can't control COVID. I can't control these fires. I can't control the economic fallout. So, in a social justice situation, there is actions we can take. But for a lot of this, when are the kids going to go back to school? When, can I just hug my friends? That's where patience comes into play. I would like to look for a volunteer to read this, because we're going to read this. This is was an interview I did actually with a friend of mine this was in the book, and he was in one of my early Mussar groups. And we're going to read this, and then we're going to break up into our groups for some conversation. So may I have a volunteer to read, please? Maybe someone we haven't heard from yet today.
I'll read if you like.
Thank you, Carol.
When you're on a job search, you're constantly putting yourself out there, and you need to be patient because responses are slow and sometimes never come at all. The process gets harder and harder as the length of unemployment increases. I learned to recognize that I could not influence the outcome. Shall I go on?
Let's just pause there. Does anyone feel, what does that have in common with our current situation, where maybe, I don't know if anyone here is on the job market, but what is that at all similar to where we are today?
Well, I think we're just waiting for this to be over. There's no end in sight.
Yes.
So, like waiting for some Godot or some answer that's not going to come anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, I mean, to go with that, Joanne, I think it's also that we're waiting for an antibody or, you know, a vaccine or some sort,
Right.
you know, that will at least protect us from it.
Right.
And that seems like it's a long way off as well.
Right.
I feel like in that first paragraph, it's really saying it's so unknown right now. That's where it's the influence of the unknown is impacting us.
Mm-hmm. And is that influence constant over time, or do things change?
Things will change, but we can't control that change. So if we can't control that change, again, it goes back to your decision-making tree. I think you have to look at what can you control. The fact that you're taking care of yourself or you're, in this case, in the first paragraph, you're looking for work, you can keep doing that action. You just can't be attached to the outcome yet because it's unknown. And that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of discipline.
Yeah.
I think it gets harder, don't you? I mean, to me, it gets harder because there's more unknown as time goes on. Also, the economic fallout from all this is unknown at this point, but it's all on our minds somewhere. But how do you measure it? So it gets harder.
I think you measure it in faith and trust as you gain experience and wisdom. Hopefully, that's what helps us. It helps me.
Well, that's a potentially a very powerful tool, Wendy, to bring to bear. But what Pat was saying was one of the things that I like when I was reading this, as I was preparing, I was like, yeah, you know, the longer this goes on, it seems like the harder it becomes. And like first it's kind of like summer camp, and oh, isn't it nice? I can eat lunch with my wife every week. And now it's like, you know, God, do I have to eat lunch with my wife again every day? You know, it's things start to wear. And okay, so please continue, Carol.
Practicing patience helped me bear the waiting and focus my energy elsewhere. Instead of ruminating on why I had not heard back from someone or why I was unemployed, being patient allowed me to focus on opportunity to use time in other ways. I started serious bike riding and made friends with other riders. In addition, I had the luxury to plan a wonderful vacation with my wife. If I had just been fixated on looking on job boards and waiting for email, I would not have had the mental bandwidth for these positive things.
Thank you, Carol. So this was a couple things to point out. You know, that didn't happen overnight. You know, again, he had to work for this. And so, you know, there have been times in my life where I read something like this and be like, God, what's the matter with me? Why haven't I like written my next book? Or why haven't I made better use of this time? So the purpose isn't to kind of, you know, and so if you're having some of those feelings, those can be natural, but to just sort of recognize them, that those are not, you know, the positive voices, that, you know, those are coming from the evil inclination, not the good inclination. And to recognize that this took, you know, he had to practice patience. You know, again, this was something he had to work for. And it didn't start out, you know, it started out where he was constantly on the job boards and he was constantly like checking his email. So let's see, as we break up into groups, what I'd like to either talk about today is kind of what resonated with you about the story of patience that we read, and what is something you might do to channel some of your energy in a different way during this time. And again, this isn't like there's no right or wrong answers. This isn't like pie in the sky, and it's probably not the time, you know, it may not be the time to kind of do something super ambitious. It kind of depends on the level of stress we're under and other things. And of course, as always, to take this as an opportunity to check in where we are. Okay, so I will set up the breakout groups. And if you're alone in a room, just hang out and someone else will join you, or there'll be another button that comes on the screen that will give you a chance to, I'll move you to a different room. Okay, so we'll go a little longer than usual because it's our second week. So the rooms are now open. I'm going to stop the share. Janet, you asleep? Oh, I think Janet's. Wendy, are you going to join your room? There you go. Pat, we will move you in to room number 1. And I think for those of you who've been watching in the live stream, because this is going to be a long breakout session, I'm going to end the live stream now. If you go to the American Mussar YouTube channel, I'm going to pause the recording and then I will start recording again once we begin anew. Hey, welcome back. People are starting to return. We got a few, about 30 seconds till we'll get the mandatory closure. Hope you had a time for a bit more of a spacious conversation today. And this should be everybody else. Okay, welcome back once again. So I hope you've had a nice and spacious conversation, and I'm curious, were there some insights that anyone would care to share, or some ways that perhaps their energy could be redirected during this time? Gail.
The insight that my partner shared was, which is true, but you sometimes have to think about it, is that patience is situational. Just like all of these midot that are on their own spectrum. And it really depends on the circumstance you're in and what it is that you're going through, and even what else is going on with you, because your own threshold can go up and down. So I thought that was something to keep in mind, that you can't expect the same thing of yourself in every circumstance.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Other thoughts or insights?
One of the things that came up in our discussion in the breakout room was the idea of doing something that you can do and making use of the time. So in this case, it was writing, because it could easily be something else. So what opportunity presents itself that would not have been there before? And that I would just call keeping it positive. And that's helpful.
Great, thank you. Looking for an opportunity that presents itself. So one example might be writing.
Yeah, Greg, I've been channeling my energy and everything. I don't know if it really has to do with patience, but well, no, it does actually. In terms of purging. If any of you have heard of the Marie Kondo book or any kinds of purging and just simplifying my life and getting stuff out of here, right? And that does take patience because you have to figure out if you want to keep it or not. But one thing wonderful about these breakout rooms, I met someone who I hadn't met before, and we're both musicians.
Oh, wow.
And that was just like, to share that, you know, is just so uplifting because when we share things like this, that can inspire us. So I'm not a composer, but I have done some things with my piano and try to compose songs. And so now since he is, and you know, there's this connection, and now he's kind of inspired me to go back to my piano maybe after the Mussar session and start doing more, because I really missed the connection with COVID. I can't play my get together with my early music people, and I miss my music so much. So I want to channel that into more music.
Wonderful. When we meet each other face to face and one-on-one, just amazing things can happen. Really, truly amazing. And these pairings are always random, and it's just amazes me how often, not every time, but how often people really connect. Amelia.
Well, I'd like to say that fortunately, I was paired with someone who is also somewhat new in the Mussar practice. I mean, in terms of trying to implement the actual day-to-day practice, and we shared our struggles with the journaling piece. And it was reassuring to me to hear that someone else, because my Shavruta has not had that problem. She journals really well. So it was reassuring to me. And it also kind of reaffirmed my commitment to really attempt to implement that part of the practice.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I want to share a practice that I started doing a couple days ago. And I, you know, did not have a very deep Jewish education. And I'm, you know, Judaism is it's a culture of lifelong learning. So that's okay if like I didn't know a lot of stuff then, or if you don't know a lot of stuff now. But one of the things that I learned, you know, was that there's actually a Hebrew calendar, and that there are months in the Hebrew year, and that different months have kind of different themes that go along with them. And so right now we're in the month of Elul, which is the last month of the year. And it's actually used as kind of a prep or a training ground for the high holidays, which for me always have been really, for those of you who may not be familiar with them, there's a lot of self-reflection that goes on. And, you know, decades before I'd even heard of Mussar, I still used Yom Kippur. I fasted. I used it as a day to kind of examine my life. And so Elul is kind of a chance to kind of start practicing and start doing that reflection. And one of the practices for Elul, which I'd never done before, and I would say like 4 or 5 days ago, I was just like, what am I doing? I felt just really lost, really overwhelmed by stuff. I felt very disconnected. And then somewhere I just heard, and I was reminded of this practice of reading the 27th Psalm every day during Elul. And I'm just curious, like, how many people have heard of this practice before? I see a couple of hands.
Doing it, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it in my community, in fact.
Oh, great. You like
We
getting
have
together on
meditation
Zoom and reading it?
We're reading it every morning, and then there's a different reading to go with it every day, and then we discuss it.
Uh-huh. What's the power? I'm just curious, what's that experience like doing it every day and doing it every day in community? What sort of things are, what's happening with that? That sounds fascinating.
It can be. Some people are finding it tedious to read the same thing over and over again. But because there's a different meditation that goes with it every day, and it gets you into a different verse of the psalm each day, it's gradually moving through the verses. It's really opened up a whole lot of discussion about what does this mean, and why are we reading this? Why is this the psalm we read in Elul? And it's gotten into some good discussions.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just a little bit of a lifeline. It's like, well, this is what we're supposed to do. Let me give it a try. And just by like trying something and doing something, I started connecting with it and resonating with it. There's a line early on that says, there's just one thing that I ask. And so for me, that's very Mussar centric, because we just focus on one thing at a time. But I had something different that I was focusing on. Let me once again pull up the slides. And that was the end of the psalm. So may we have a volunteer to kind of read the last 4 verses, please.
I will.
Thanks, Lainey.
Okay, 11. Show me your way, Divine One, and lead me on a level path because of my watchful foes. 12. Do not subject me to the will of my foes, for false witness and unjust accusers have appeared against me. 13. Had I not the assurance that I would enjoy the goodness of the divine in the land of the living. 14. Look to the divine, be strong and of good courage. Oh, look to the divine.
Thank you. So who's the foe right now?
Maybe COVID.
That was what I thought. I'm like, yeah.
Like
yeah,
there's
maybe
a lot of
COVID's the
unrest
foe.
going on. So there's a lot of, that to me.
Yeah. You know, it's not like false witnesses and unjust accusers, but there's certainly a real unfairness about this whole COVID situation. You know, it is disrupted everyone. It's devastated some people. It's devastated me. You know, it is a lifetime event. And so what's the advice? What's the advice from this psalm?
I look at it a little differently. These teachings, I feel that it's us. We are the foe.
That's another, absolutely.
I'm not saying COVID isn't, but I'm saying that there's a good balance here between us and whoever the foe is.
Yeah, well, certainly we all have an inner adversary. We all have that voice inside which tries to derail us. Yeah, and there's many interpretations that one could take. Absolutely. And not all of us are sure about the divinity, and I'm not necessarily in the habit of looking to the divine, but a little bit I was like, where else am I going to turn right now? And maybe there is something in the face of kind of an unstoppable or something at least beyond my power to stop all of these different things. Maybe I do need to, be of strong and good courage. And there is an element of courage, I think, that it takes to kind of invoke patience and to say, all right, you know, I'm not going to look forward to when my kid gets back to school, as Elisheva kind of started us with. You know, I'm just going to stay in the present. You know, I'm just going to accept where we are and look around and see what opens up for me. So let's use this as a starting point for our closing meditation once again. So please close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. Think where you can draw strength from. Is it meditation? Is it prayer? Is it community? Maybe it's nature. Maybe it's taking walks. Let's, as in our next inhale, let's try to draw in both strength and courage from this community that we've created together. Feel the straightening of your shoulders and the lifting of your head. Feel the calm settle over your body. As you see yourself walking arm in arm. As we connect across the distance with those of us who are here today. And know that we are not alone. And may, as we exit this call today, continue to walk with our heads high. May that strength and courage carry us through the week. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. I will stop our recording.